Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage, and first of all I wish you all a happy new year. 2020 has been like no other year before, and for a lot of people it has been truly awful. Of course, things don't just magically turn around when the new year begins, but let's hope and work to make this one better. When it comes to movies, it was of course also a very different year, and there's only one single movie on my top 10 list that I have actually seen in a movie theater. With the advent of streaming, a lot is changing, especially for smaller movies that don't belong to big franchises. And the pandemic certainly accelerated that development tremendously. And we will see how cinemas and the release strategies for movies will continue to change in the near future. Many big budget movies have been pushed to this year, or they were released directly on streaming instead. And for a long time I wasn't quite sure how this list would even turn out. The initial assumption is probably that there won't be that many great movies, and while there are some very recognizable shifts, especially in the ever more blurring line between TV or home release and cinema, at the end of the year there were nevertheless so many fantastic films that had come out, some way or the other. For some of them you maybe just need to look a little bit more careful to find them. I have spent the last days basically watching movies all day long in an attempt to catch up with all the stuff that I have missed up until now. And I was quite surprised to keep finding more and more really promising movies. In total I have watched 69 new releases over the year. I mean, if I haven't forgotten to write down one or the other. And like always, it's needless to say, but I do it anyway. Of course, nobody can watch everything, and these lists are also highly subjective. But that's what makes them interesting anyway. 3 movies that I really wanted to, but couldn't see yet are The Father, Minari and Nomadland. But all of them have their bigger release in 2021 anyway. But without further ado, let's get started with my top 10 best movies of 2020.
This is a criminal matter.
Frank's gonna fix this.
Number 10. Bad Education. Corey Finley's second film, Bad Education, is a true crime story that is carried by a fantastic performance by Hugh Jackman in the lead. It is set in 2002 and tells the story of the beloved Superintendent Dr. Frank Tassone of New York's Roseland School District. He and his staff, wonderfully portrayed by Allison Janney and Ray Romano, seek to make their school district the best in the country. But when it's revealed that Frank's assistant superintendent Pam, played by Jenny, secretly stole huge amounts of money from the public budget, things turn ugly, and the film does a terrific job unfolding its fascinating story along the lines of truth and falsehood, and it does so in a very entertaining way. There are several twists and turns, the big ensemble cast totally shows up to shine, and the direction and presentation are pretty flawless. It's quite funny, and at the same time it gives a great insight into the complexities of human nature and the temptations of exploiting the system to one's own advantage. And it's also a wonderful testament to the importance of good journalism, something that will come back with another pick on my list later on. As always, I don't just want to give you my top 10, but also include several honorable mentions, because I mostly understand these lists as great opportunities to suggest a lot of good movies to a lot of people. I also like to create some kind of loose connectivity between my picks, and therefore my first honorable mention is Education. It is the last part in Steve McQueen's miniseries Small Axe that is available on Amazon Prime. It is a miniseries, but more so a project that contains of 5 individual films, all directed and co-written by Steve McQueen, of which you can watch each on their own. They are connected by their setting and themes, and they all deal with the lives of West Indian immigrants in London during the 1960s, 70s and 80s. Education is the last 1 hour long film and it's my favorite, but the whole project is worth seeing.
I always thought it was insulting to treat you like a child. And I thought we agreed on that.
We can only ever be how we are.
Number 9. Cagillionaire. Miranda July's latest film Cagillionaire is an odd and quite unique coming-of-age tale that's certainly not for everyone. It is about this little family, the 2 old parents played by Richard Jenkins and Deborah Winger, and their daughter with the peculiar name Old Dolio, played by Evan Rachel Wood. The 3 of them spend each and every day trying to make some money by all kinds of different con jobs. They are behaving very weirdly, and there's no warmth or any kind of love felt between them. It's all about making barely enough money to survive, and everything is treated like a transaction. I knew from the trailer that Cagillionaire has a very odd, absurd, low-key kind of humor, but I wasn't expecting it to be this tragic and emotionally rewarding. It has a wonderful style and a nice score by Emile Mosseri. And it also has this dark side and modern fairy tale touch. Evan Rachel Wood is really something as this troubled young woman, and it reminded me of Edward Scissorhands. And to see her progression, see her breaking off her shackles, really affected me. Another film that really affected me and sent me on my personal Charlie Kaufman retrospective was his newest work, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which is my next honorable mention. Again, certainly not for everyone, but its surreal, melancholic and icy atmosphere definitely put a spell on me. And another honorable mention to complete this American independent film trio is Judd Apatow's The King of Staten Island, starring Pete Davidson, who is very much telling his own story. That of a young man whose father was a firefighter who died on 9/11. Now Scott, Davidson's film persona, spends most of his days just hanging around, smoking weed and dreaming of becoming a tattoo artist. For me, this was one of the best feel-good movies of the year. It felt so natural and just gave me the best time. And it also features comedian Bill Burr in a really wonderful role. Number 8. Ayapanum Koshiyum. This one I saw quite early into the year and for the longest time it remained my number 1. It's a Malayalam language action drama with a nice touch of humor. It's the second and unfortunately last film by writer and director Sachi, who tragically died at the age of just 48 last June. Ayapanum Koshiyum stars Prithviraj Sukumaran and Biju Menon as the titular characters Koshi and Ayapan. One is a senior police officer and the other a mysterious stranger from another town who turns out to have a lot of influence. The movie is all about the clash between those two personalities. It's kind of a David versus Goliath story, only that over the course of almost 3 hours the two positions change in a way that's not only very entertaining but also meaningful and deeper than assumed at first. And even with that epic length, there's a nice flow to it and the performances by the two leads as well as the supporting actors are really awesome. My next two honorable mentions belong to two other movies from India that had a great effect on me. The first is the Hindi language Tapat, directed by Anubhav Sinha. The title means slap in English and the story revolves around a seemingly happily married couple played by Tapsi Pannu and Pavel Gulati. But when Amrita gets slapped by her husband once during a party, her whole life and perception of their relationship get shattered and the movie carefully depicts the aftermath of that event. The other honorable mention is the Malayalam language romance thriller Kapila, directed by Muhammad Mustafa. It features terrific performances by Anna Ben, Srinath Basi and Roshan Mathew, and I really enjoyed how its little, first rather familiar story unfolds and turns into something very different that I of course won't give away at this point. There's another great Indian movie that I have seen, but that one isn't an honorable mention. It will show up on the list a bit higher. Number 7. Dinner in America. Adam Remeyer's truly awesome, politically incorrect, uncompromising punk rock feel-good romance Dinner in America is the only film on my top 10 that I actually saw in a movie theater, which is extra special because this one isn't really out yet. So far it was only screened at some film festivals and as far as I know there's still no release date. So depending on how you look at it, this might be more like one of the best movies of 2021. I include it anyway so that you can reserve it for when you get a chance to see it in the future. Dinner in America tells the story of two misfits, the lead singer in a punk band who is on the run from the police and a young woman Patty who is still living with her family and who is rather peculiar when it comes to her appearance and behavior. Kyle Gallner and Emily Skeggs are amazing and their chemistry and growing affection for each other is wonderful. The characters feel so fresh, raw and yet so lovable at the same time. My next honorable mention is Anthony Scott Burns' melancholic, deeply immersive horror sci-fi movie Come True, which I saw at the same festival as Dinner in America, and which also hasn't had a regular release yet. And I'm personally waiting for the movie's soundtrack's release because the music by Pilot Priest, which is the alter ego of director Anthony Scott Burns, and Electric Youth is one of the movie's strongest points. And speaking about music, my next honorable mention goes to the Netflix production Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which was directed by George C. Wolfe and is featuring the last and I think best performance by Black Panther actor Chadwick Boseman, who died way too young at the age of 43 last August. The movie, which is based on Pulitzer Prize winner August Wilson's play, revolves around a blues music recording session in 1927's Chicago, with Boseman playing an ambitious horn player and Viola Davis portraying the demanding mother of blues, Ma Rainey. But of course the movie isn't just about blues music, and I highly recommend it, let alone for the incredible performances.
Whatever Pepe meant to all these other people didn't mean the same thing to me. I'm doing everything I can in my power to shut these assholes up.
Answer the question I asked you.
Can we turn a recognized hate symbol into a love symbol?
Number 6. Feels Good Man. I have to be honest with you, I have certainly seen some images of the comic character Pepe the Frog on the internet before, but I didn't even know his name. I have also heard that he was instrumentalized by white supremacists, but I certainly didn't know much about his fascinating story. And more than just presenting this story, Arthur Jones's directorial debut documentary Feels Good Man shines a light on how our culture operates and transforms, and how one initially very innocent and fun creation can become something else entirely. It's also a cautionary tale and highly relevant. And it's also a very lovingly portrait of the artist and creator of Pepe, Matt Fury. So give this really entertaining but also quite informative documentary a chance. The second half of my list won't have any honorable mentions, but before we get there, let me give you 4 more, all from the realm of documentaries, because I have seen some truly remarkable ones last year. Dick Johnson is Dead is filmmaker Kirsten Johnson's very personal and a very unique way of coping with the fact that her father is inevitable heading towards the end of his life. But her documentary isn't just heartfelt and sad, but also filled with a lot of quite dark humor, as they stage many different ways her father could suddenly die. Jeff Orlovsky's The Social Dilemma is something I would recommend everybody to watch, because it depicts something that concerns all of us. And while I think that many people know that they are probably spending too much time on their phones or on social media, I don't think everybody knows about all the dangers that come with that, how it's affecting our society and our democracies. Totally Under Control, directed by Alex Gibney, Ophelia Harutunian and Suzanne Hillinger, came out in October, and watching it just a few months later, it already feels outdated in many regards. It's an in-depth look at how the United States government failed miserably in handling the COVID-19 outbreak. But because it very much focuses on the importance of those first weeks, it's still very insightful and of course also a cautionary tale that it might be better not to elect right-wing populists who care neither for science nor anybody but themselves. And my last honorable mention, which is aiming at the same kind of people, is Jason Wolina's mockumentary Borat Subsequent Movie Film, which I think is just as great as the first one and today more relevant than ever. And while we already know just how good Sacha Baron Cohen is, Maria Bakalova, who plays his daughter in the film, is keeping up with him just fine. She's so amazing in this. And now for my top 5 of the year. Number 5. Surarai Potru. If you followed the channel recently, then this one doesn't come as a surprise. The Tamil language drama is loosely based on real events and tells the story of a man who sets out to make the common man fly, who wants to establish India's first low-budget airline so that everyone can afford the dream and the commodity to fly. Sudha Kongara's film is a rousing underdog story and lead actor Surya is absolutely fantastic. It is a commercial film and it does feature the stuff that comes with that. There are songs, there's romance, but it's done in a way that's in service of the story and the characters and that amplifies the themes. Aparna Balumarali is so good in her role as Surya's love interest Sundari that the term love interest is actually not doing it justice. Almost all of the film's aspects click. It's exciting, sometimes funny, sometimes romantic, very emotional and super inspiring.
Și noi am avut o încredere oarbă în autorități.
Iar ce vedem aici, de când am venit, dar tot ce e sub este puteți.
Number 4. Collective. Alexander Nanau's Romanian documentary Collective is probably the most difficult film to watch on my list. It revolves around a group of investigative journalists at a Romanian newspaper and later transfers more to the perspective of the new Minister of Health. We closely follow these people in their almost impossible attempt of uncovering public healthcare fraud and corruption. Corruption that runs so deep that it's almost hopeless. Collective depicts a very distinct case and most people won't have any connection to the Romanian healthcare sector. But of course this is far more universal and the movie an outstanding appeal to the importance of good journalism and also to just doing the right thing. The story, or rather the events depicted in the movie, are at times unbelievable and they are almost uncovering like a thriller, only that this is real life and that the documentary is presented as sober as possible. There's no voiceover, there's no music, there aren't any big dramatizations, and they are not needed because the content and these people speak for themselves, and that's all the drama you need.
You pushed him!
Number 3. Waves. Trey Edward Schultz's third feature film Waves already had its US release in 2019, but for the rest of the world it's more a 2020 movie. And because it's not really that important and I just now finally watched it, I just had to include it. This is a hard-hitting drama that tells the story of a black suburban family. And maybe it's good to know that it has two very distinct halves, with the first one focusing on the son Tyler, played by Calvin Harrison Jr., and the second focusing on the daughter Emily, played by Taylor Russell. It also stars Sterling K. Brown in a mesmerizing role as their domineering father, and Lucas Hedges, who basically always shines. It is a story about youth, love, forgiveness, loss and family. But most of all, Waves is also a film with impeccable style. This is one of the most vibrant movies in recent memory. It looks, sounds and feels incredible. At times it has almost a music video feeling to it. It also evokes nuances of Terrence Malick, and in its scope of tragedy, it also reminded me just a little bit of Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream. But with a lot more beauty and in the end hopefulness to it. It has so much energy, but it's also tender and graceful. The cinematography was done by Drew Daniels and the film's score composed by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, complemented by some very poignant contemporary songs. And equally important for the film's amazing flow is the editing, done by Isaac Hagee, and writer and director Trey Edward Schultz himself. Waves is an emotional tour de force and I loved it.
A lot of people say an octopus is like an alien. But the strange thing is, as you get closer to them, you realize that we're very similar in a lot of ways.
Number 2. My Octopus Teacher. With a year as bad as 2020, there have been several movies with people saying that they are exactly what we need right now. Something that in a way is able to give some consolation, something that is giving hope, something that is showing us how beautiful and wondrous our world is. And something that also demonstrates how we can connect to one another and learn from each other. And in this case, it's an octopus that we can learn from. My Octopus Teacher is a unique documentary that was directed by Pippa Ehrlich and James Reed. It is about the South African documentary filmmaker Craig Foster and the beautiful experiences he made while diving in the kelp forest at a remote location near Cape Town. He was diving every single day, and over the course of about a year he developed a fascinating relationship with an octopus. Now, I know that sounds strange, and I won't deny that you could read the movie as a strange horror stalker tale if you want to make fun of it. But then you are missing the point. It is a very personal journey. It's already in the title. My Octopus Teacher. This is Craig Foster's way of dealing with his depression at the time, but through this film it becomes something very universal. And to see a human being be able to make this incredible connection with another living being, a living being as mysterious as an octopus, it's truly remarkable. The film really spoke to me through the way it shows our ability or the chance to connect with other living beings in this world, and also in portraying the beauty and wonders of the natural world in this meditative, inspiring way. And while it's certainly also just heartwarming to witness this strange animal getting more familiar with the filmmaker, the movie doesn't falsely anthropomorphize this octopus. It's a deeply moving, beautiful film, and I simply can't recommend it enough.
Life is full of possibilities. You just need to know where to look. Don't miss out on the joys of life.
Number 1. Soul. You've probably seen it coming. Like My Octopus Teacher, Pixar's new film was just what I needed right now. I've already watched it 4 times, which is something that almost never happens. The last time I watched a new film that many times shortly after its release was with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Funnily enough, also an animated movie that takes place in New York. But after Soul had affected me so much the first time, I just had to watch it again with friends and family. Soul, directed by Pete Docter and co-directed by Cam Powers, is another Pixar masterpiece, and easily among the studio's most mature and profound works. To begin, a big commercial family entertainer with the main protagonist dying is a bold move, but it pays off tremendously, and the emotional resonance is simply incredible. It's not just a super entertaining, of course gorgeously animated film, but it's also able to give you a new outlook on life, or simply give you joy and hope and a deep appreciation to live in this world. So that's my top 10 best movies of 2020 list. I hope I could point you to some great films you haven't heard about yet or weren't certain about. And I also hope to see your list and probably learn about some movies that I have missed. Please share them in the comments below. I think it's also a good moment to thank you all for watching, and for those of you who have supported us over all this time, you are the reason why we are still doing this. For those new to the channel, please consider subscribing for our weekly in-depth movie reviews. And for those who have been around a bit longer, how about checking out our Patreon or YouTube membership for some exclusive rewards, like early access to all our stuff, regular movie polls, and the option to choose a movie directly for us to review. Of course, you can also hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Letterboxd simply at TheJimmyCage. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like, and make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.